Welcome to the Attention Now podcast, where we dive deep with leaders, warriors, and game changers who live with purpose and make an impact. Today's guest is someone who has served for our freedom and continues to make an impact to protect it today. Dr. Timothy Shindelar. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dave. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you. I'm honored and excited to have you on here today, and it's a privilege to have you here. If I could start off with an introduction, and it's a pretty long introduction, so bear with me because you were in the Marine Corps. You've been doing a lot of great stuff lately. So, Dr. Timothy Shindelar is a U.S. Marine Corps colonel, retired researcher and investigator focused on exposing hard truths where systems fail and narratives replace facts. His current work centers on accountability, information control, and the real-world consequences when truth is ignored. On this episode, Dr. Shindelar draws on decades of Marine Corps leadership, firsthand research to speak candidly about the ongoing project, that the pressures surrounding uncomfortable facts, and while asking the right questions matters now more than ever, cutting through noise and delivering clarity to those who value truth over narrative and why this mission matters. Colonel Shindelar has extensive operational experience gained in conflicts spanning from Persian Gulf, Kosovo, Subic Bay, Iraq, Afghanistan, Chief of Staff of Afghanistan National Army, U.S. Marine Corps Headquarters, Pentagon, the Joint Staff G8, Force Structure Resources Assessment Directorate, Deputy Director Resource and Acquisition, Washington, D.C., Fellow Near East South Asia, Center for Strategic Studies, Washington, D.C., Deputy Director, Stability Operations, International Security Assistance Force, Kabul, Afghanistan, and State Department Mission to Afghanistan, Kabul in Afghanistan. Dr. Shindelar also has 5 different degrees, BS degree from U.S. Naval Academy, Master of Science from the U.S. Naval War College, Master of Arts degree from Edmund E. Walsh School of Foreign Services, Georgetown University, Master of Science degree from Eisenhower School of National Security and Research Strategy, and a doctorate degree from the University of Southern California. Buckle up, this episode hits deep so we could change and save lives in our country. Dr. Shindelar, did I miss anything that you would like to add on your intro?
No, that's more than enough.
Okay, awesome. So, perfect. Let's start off with how many years did you serve in the Marine Corps?
30.
30 years. Okay, awesome. And can you tell us why you decided to join the Marine Corps when you went in, and at what age?
I enlisted, and I came in via the Navy, and I was enlisted for a couple of years, and then I went to the Naval Academy Prep School, which is up in Newport, Rhode Island.
Okay.
And I went to the academy for 4 years, and I really liked the Marine Corps complement. That was what really drew my attention. We have some Marine instructors as well as naval officer instructors while we're there, because the service academy is like a college, but yet not like a college.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So the point was, you have these leadership examples, and I have to admit, from day one, I liked the quality, the handling, the teaching, the leadership aura, if you will,
Okay.
about the Marine Corps, and I still do. I mean, it's a great organization.
So before the Naval Academy, did you go into boot camp right out of high school?
What I did is I came in, and then I went in through the delayed entry
Okay.
system, and then I went into the prep school.
Oh, interesting. So, but did you go to boot camp as well?
No, I did not.
Interesting. Okay, awesome. Okay, that's a good way to do it. Perfect. And can you tell us what was the most valuable lesson you learned while you were in the Marine Corps?
Accountability.
Okay, awesome. Many people don't know that word, so I love that word.
I think if you remember, see, you share the same culture.
Right.
And people use the term culture. As a social scientist, I would say, so we have shared norms, values, and we identify as a group using those shared values. That's sort of the technical.
Right,
But the
right.
reality is, the Marine Corps is a culture unto itself, and it has certain qualities or attributes, things that we really, truly, strongly believe in, such as accountability, clear lines of responsibility, and then of course authority. And this is something that we take for granted, I think, when we think about other challenges. So I'm used to having responsibility. I'm used to having authority, and I recognize that when somebody gives me something, I'm still accountable. If I delegate it out to someone else, I'm still accountable.
Right.
If I miss the deadline, I'm accountable. I can send out and I can delegate down authority and responsibility, but not accountable. I'm always accountable.
Yeah, you can't really go up to a colonel or general and say, "Hey, it was this other guy's fault," right?
Not more than once.
Perfect. What was the toughest part of the Marine Corps for you, or the biggest challenge?
I think the largest challenge is working in the interagency system, where you have several subcultures that come together, and there's a totally different, it's a culture unto itself, and you have, so those who have done joint duty, for instance, or those that have not done joint duty. But in the process of doing joint duty, then you have the whole interagency process, which is like when you want to operate, say, in foreign environments. You're going to have State Department, you're going to have USAID, you're going to have a host nation, other nations, military, as well as political requirements. And that's something that you really need to study. And you have to experience it to understand it. And this, of course, was exactly like we saw during World War II in Europe. Supreme Allied Commander and a staff that only had 13 people, running the entire
Wow.
campaign for the continent, right? And then delegating, again, see, delegating all of that responsibility down. But there was only one man accountable, and
Wow.
he was answering directly to the President of the United States, Winston Churchill, and to Stalin.
Incredible. Thank you for that. So you traveled all over the world. Can you share two missions that were very impactful to you while you were in the Marine Corps?
I think, well, that's a tough question, because everything is tough.
Which one sticks out to you the most?
I would think that being in the desert, and in doing Iraq, and then ultimately many times in Afghanistan.
Okay.
The mission in Afghanistan, of course, was extremely difficult, because the mission was not a kinetic, search and destroy. It was to build.
Right.
And of all of the tasks that are most difficult for the military instrument is, of course, building, because it's a reductive instrument that's designed to work in complement with, like, the economic instrument, and the political instrument, and the social and religious instrument. But the military instrument is designed to, it's a reductive instrument. It's designed to destroy. And we were tasked with doing something that was not in our comfort zone, which was building and reconstructing. A fractured economy, a fractured culture, and that's a tough, tough job.
Yeah. Yeah. We're like I said, we're more into destruction, so it's kind of the opposite.
Absolutely, and
That
that's
makes
tough.
sense. Awesome. Thank you. Any other one that sticks out?
I would think that the one that struck me as what I consider to be my first real experience was in the Philippines, when
Okay.
Mount Pinatubo erupted. We had a typhoon
Oh, wow.
and an earthquake, and so I remember this. And there was a volcanologist. That's a cool thing, volcanologist
You don't
there.
hear that too often.
No, and he introduced us to the volcano, and I was like, "What
Wow.
is that?" And he said, "That's when you get the effects of the earthquakes from the volcano going off, and then the impacts of the hurricane, which basically made everything worse. And I will never forget that. The sky during the middle of the day, the sky turned completely black, just
Wow.
like just like in Kuwait in the oil fields, like it blocked out the sun. And I was in a building and the windows busted out, and the building's shaking, the furniture's moving across, and it's raining heavy because of the hurricane, and the buildings are collapsing, things are falling down all around us. It was that was interesting.
Wow. It's like, is the world coming to an end or what? Yeah, I can't
That
even
was
imagine that. Wow.
it was sporty.
Man, oh man. Well, thank you for sharing those missions. We always have chapters in our lives. We spoke last week about honor and respect. Where did you first learn those principles? Was it at home or did you learn those in the Marine Corps?
No, I think I probably learned that at home.
At
I
home, yep.
remember, my father, traditional family values,
Yep.
and my father was real big on accountability. And his whole point was, if be a man or don't be a man, but if you're not going to be a man, don't act like one.
Don't pretend you are one, right?
He said there's no room for a poser.
Yeah. I'm sure the accountability had a wooden spoon involved somehow as well. I know it did for me.
Yes, and I'm sure, I know that this they don't do this anymore, I guess, whatever. But
Right.
um, being a male, and I'm sure you lived it. I know you did. That's the one thing about, we have a shared culture, so it's not fair. But obviously, you challenged your dad, I'm sure,
Right.
and I challenged my dad, and both ended up the same.
There you go.
And it was like, my way, the highway. You're going to learn to ride the bike the way I, and that's a valuable lesson.
Right.
So, and his moral guidance to me basically was, you better think before you act, and
Yeah.
take responsibility for what you do.
It's amazing back when you're 17, you think you know everything, right? You look back, it's like, wow, dad was always right,
Now, he was always right,
which is amazing. Why do you think so many people are missing those values nowadays, or a big percentage of people?
because we are going through a transition period where we're being taught that values, the sterile definition of value, and a value is simply a belief that has emotional attachment. That's what a value is. We value what our heart tells us is important. And values don't always have anything to do with logic. They don't have anything to do with anything that you can always discern or put down on a piece of paper. But when we build a set of values, this is how we operate. This is what we ultimately believe, and
Okay.
believe the strong emotional attachments to these propositions, these ideas, and they form what we call the value network. And our life is driven by our values, what we believe is important.
100%.
Strong beliefs in values. Right now, with the introduction of artificial intelligence, machine learning, supplanting human primacy, if you will,
Hmm.
we're back at a place that mankind was at before. We're approaching the tree of knowledge, being offered the apple, and some people are thinking that once they eat of the apple, they will have ultimate knowledge, and then there will be no reason for them to be beholden to God.
No, that was
I'm
that was
just,
perfect timing for my next question. How important is God in your life, and how does that He directed you to live your life?
it's everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think it's the first commandment.
Right.
You either believe strong emotional attachment to a proposition, a value, and is that we are creatures that were designed to honor God that made us.
Right.
It's a strong belief. And there's also another competing belief that says that you don't need God. It's going to be replaced anyway. The computer is going to do it all for us, and we don't need God anymore.
Man. Yeah, it's I like the way you referenced it earlier with it's the tree of life. We don't need God, which does not make sense in my mind, but I could see a lot of people thinking that. So, but I think a lot of people see in their life that when they think that way, life may not go the way they want it, unfortunately, as it did in the past.
I don't speak for anyone else. I can only speak for myself. I mean, that's just the way it is. But for me, is to know and honor God. And we either do or we don't. Doesn't mean we'll be good at it all the time. Doesn't mean that we won't make mistakes. But you must fear the Lord.
100%.
And
Is
so
is there
you
is there
do.
something you do daily to make sure you're closer to God?
For me, the first thing I do in the morning, this is just me, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
The first thing that I do in the morning is I thank God for everything that I've got. And I also then thank Him for not taking everything from me.
Yeah, exactly.
You can do
That's
that
true.
too. You can do that too. You can say,
Happened to Saul, right?
really tired of what you are, and I'm gonna take something. So I want to thank Him for everything that I have, but I also want to dedicate myself to a larger mission or a larger purpose, which is to help others.
Right.
I'm sorry, that's what I want.
No, I love that. That's I think you and I spoke about this last week as well. It's like, in our heart, we're here to, we joined the Marine Corps because we have servant hearts. And
Yes.
I think that's never gone away, right? That's kind of why I have
No.
this podcast is to get the word out, help people get better, see the light and, just learn from others that have gone before them. And hopefully we could add some value to their lives, which is incredible. Thank you for that. Uh, Talk a little bit about people wanting to succeed. Let's say you're stuck, you're not getting ahead. What success principles would you recommend for people to break through if they're stuck and not succeeding?
For me, number one is understanding and having a working definition of what is success.
Okay.
And for me, success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal. That is what success is to me. What I mean by that is I have a worthy ideal. To me, it's my worthy ideal. And my worthy ideal is that we have to serve others, that we serve others to make life better. And I cannot just get there. I just, I'm going to make life better. Boom. No,
Right.
it's a progressive series of steps. So for me, it's the progressive realization of a worthy ideal, meaning that if you're a mother, that's a worthy ideal to be a good mother, and it's a series of progressive steps to take your children and raise your children into responsible adults. So I'm not judging people. Of course, money seems to be the common denominator for most people. If you're successful, you got a lot of money. If you're not successful, well, you got no money, you're not successful. I don't prescribe to that per se. I prescribe more to through service you create. I don't want to hold, I want to create. I want to create better situations, better conditions, opportunities for others, because I believe that as we come together as a group, we will achieve more as a group than I could ever achieve as an individual.
Right. 100%. Yeah.
That's it.
Awesome. Love that. Thank you so much. Uh, One last thing about the military, and then we're going to jump into what you're doing because it's so incredible. Uh, with post-traumatic stress, did you have any challenges with that? And if you did, how did you deal with it?
Um, I think that we all do,
Hmm.
and I think it's a question of how do we handle it.
Okay.
And the first step in how do you handle it is to acknowledge that it's there. What I mean is, and you as a military guy know this, um, it's easy to see in others, but not so easy to see in yourself. You and I both know people, and you're saying, man, the guy's drinking himself to death. The guy's abusive in his family. He's abusing himself.
Right.
And he sees there's a problem, but he doesn't know who to reach out to, who to talk to, where to go. And I think that is probably the most important thing I have to do. If I see this, a veteran, and I sense what's going on, or I see it, I think I have an obligation to help them. Period.
Right. Absolutely.
Because, I mean, as you well know, less than 1/2 of 1% of this nation serves. 1/2 of 1%. So, in the performance of arduous public service, 1/2 of 1%, 1.4 million people active duty, got about 352 million Americans. So, we represent a very small minority that has willingly volunteered to perform arduous public service on behalf of the civilian majority. That is public service. Now, I'm not saying that my public service is any better than anyone else's, but public service is the heart of America. And I think we're moving further and further away from the realization that we must give more than we take. We have to give. And if
Right.
we're willing to give and we just take, there will come a point where there's no more to take.
Yeah.
And I don't want to see that, because that's not what that's not what this nation offers. This nation offers benefits, you know, riches, food, everything. We have been blessed. This nation was blessed, and the commandment that we were given was to honor God and to serve. And we were also given all these gifts. So we have to appreciate the fact that we have to give back. That's what public service is. I mean,
Right.
public service is simply giving back. And there's a lot of people who do not believe in public service anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of people, a big percentage, excuse me, nowadays is all about themselves, taking care of themselves. But as you mentioned, we're here to serve and help others. I was telling my younger daughter the other day, it's like, hey, Jesus came here. He could have had anything he wanted. He could have had, he could have had a big mansion back in the day or whatever, millions of dollars. But what was he doing? He was out traveling the world, helping, healing others, teaching the 12 disciples. So he had a team as well. And so he was here to serve. And for me, that's the best example out there, is to follow that. So thank you.
And that's what we should do.
All right, let's jump into, you retired out of the Marine Corps, right? Did you go
Yes.
work for government right away?
Um, in a sense, I had a business where I was doing basic development, counseling, and then offering sounding board work, like,
Okay.
some, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Which was really good. I mean, quite frankly, because it was the first time that I was in a position to offer, my advice to people who wanted to hear it.
Right.
And then that was essentially my job, so, and mostly for companies and mostly for high worth net individuals, and asking them, what do you think, so, what direction do you think will futurist, what we now call futurist,
Okay.
which quite frankly is just really good knowledge of history and the social sciences and such, and then sort of predicting or giving you a possible idea of where you might go and then why you might go there. And then offering that individual an opportunity to either accept it or to not accept it or to think about it. And that was a new calling for me. And then had a good friend of mine who said, hey, you need to go work for the Department of Defense Inspectors General oversight mission.
Okay.
And I was like, well, why do you say that? And I said, well, because you're perfect for it. He goes, you've commanded in there. You built the strategic plan for, while you were at the International Security Assistance Force. You've been at the State Department, which was implementing the plan. And he says, so now you're in a position where you would be a subject matter expert and you could tell them, this is what we need to audit. This is what we need to investigate. This will help the commanders on the field.
Love it.
And I thought that was a nice fix. So I went there, and they hired me as an expert, and I was tasked with performing the strategic oversight planning, which is just a big word for taking everything that the State Department was doing in Iraq, Afghanistan, and these operations which were referred to as overseas contingency operations,
Okay.
and build a plan so that they would know how to harness all of the economic resources, all of the personnel, and to say, you need to look at this. You might want to look at that. You might want to consider putting more resources towards this and taking some from that. And it's a complex process, but it helps steer, it steers the effort. And meaning that a commander can look at that and say, oh, okay, we might go here, we might go there, but can you tell me what will, what do I give up if I do this? Well, that usually takes a lot of time. And so when you plan, you build that in. For instance, if you go over here, this is what it's going to cost you. So this is your opportunity cost. Oh,
Okay.
okay. And so you're not making you're not telling people what to do. You're simply doing the risk addressed strategy,
Got it.
consequences and possibilities. And that is strategic planning. So it
Perfect.
was a nice fit, actually a very good fit. And plus I was still giving back.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I thought, this is great.
Win-win for everyone, right?
I thought so.
And how did everyone take that subject matter expert recommendations when you were there?
It was not well received. Yeah. At first I thought it was just a question of benign ignorance or
Okay.
malaise, but then I started to understand that some of the decision making was clearly indicative of something much worse. It was an intentional effort not to have accountability.
Wow.
That was a shock to me.
So they were supposed to be what or controlling the accountability, but they were not. They were
Absolutely.
just letting it
In,
slide and not worry about it.
engineering it out, literally
Wow.
engineering accountability out. What I mean by that is this. For instance, okay, we're going to transfer, 100,000 weapons. Okay, sounds good, right?
Right.
Well, you go from here, go to there, do this, do that, but we're going to have to make sure we account for all the serial numbers, right?
Of course.
Right?
Yeah.
No, we're not going to do that. Well, somebody else will do that. Well, it's not that important. And at first, of course, you can appreciate it as well as I do how
Wow.
shocking that is. Well,
Holy cow. That's just red tape. Don't worry about it, Tim.
exactly. And I'm like, yes, but if I'm going to do an audit, I'm going to do an investigation, I'm probably not going to take a look at, bags of flour. It
Right.
might be important, but transferring of weapons is
Weapons. Yeah.
maybe a little more important. And I want to make sure I have good accountability on this. Fuel. I want to make sure I know where all the fuel's going. I probably would like to know if we're hiring a contractor to do a job that he is performing the contract as stated. In other words, we're getting what we want. And what was ultimately happening was we were not oversighting anything.
Wow. Were you able to see where they were misdirecting or directing to other places some of those items on the
I
list?
would. There was competitive programs, and what I mean by that is like you see the books behind me.
Yes.
There's only so many.
Right.
If you know the total number of books and you say I want half to go this direction, that means you only have half left to go any other direction, right?
And those are not accounted for, the other half.
Exactly.
Got
So
it.
if you're telling me that two-thirds are going left, you can't have half going right. There's only a third left. So the concern that
Got it.
I
Okay.
the concern that I had was if the mission, as given from Congress, which was fully funded and paid for, was to perform the strategic planning necessary to oversight what we refer to as our overseas contingency operations, which were significant. We're talking multi-billion dollars.
Wow.
Efforts in Iraq, efforts in Afghanistan, and when you think about how Afghanistan ended, it reinforces every single thing I'm saying. It's
Wow.
virtually impossible to leave when you leave hundreds of millions of dollars worth of equipment without some form of decision making.
Right.
I'm going on vacation, but I'll leave my stuff. No, it's a decision. It's a choice. And
Right.
with choices come consequence.
And
And
not, and obviously they weren't accountable for anybody, right? To anyone, so they could just do what they wanted.
yes, in other
Wow.
words, I wouldn't go that far.
Okay.
What I would sign up for is you can't look back and make any kind of consequential decisions about accountability. Therefore, with no accountability, there's no responsibility. And if there's no authority, I guess nothing really happened. So we take a look at the consequence.
Got
And in
it.
this particular case, it's nation state failure. Well, it just didn't happen. It's not magic, because we sent resources, we sent experts, and we perform these functions, and it either succeeds or it fails. And we learn more from failure than we do from success, right?
Right. That's true. So basically, those books behind you that were not there were just not there. That's it.
That's it. Just and it's let's move on. Let's just and if it weren't for the fact that it was the public's treasure and a lot of good people, the whole time this was happening, we're like, whoa, whoa, wait a minute. We need to do this. We need to do that. Have you checked this? Have you checked that? I'm not real sure that that's a good decision. Hey, well, you shouldn't do this. You shouldn't do that. And these people we call public servants. And these public servants are the bulwark between the treasure of our nation's treasure,
Right.
and they are the vanguard, if you will, for the public. The
Yeah.
public sends their taxes to the government. The public servants become the stewards, ensuring that we use effective and efficient measures to protect the people's treasure. Yes, it's public service. And they were doing it. See, that's the point. It's not like they didn't do it, they were stopped from doing it. Or worse, they were removed from their jobs for doing it.
I was going to ask you that next. So what did you do about it since you saw that?
Through as I started to see what was happening, and I knew that there was a question here between what we would refer to as an ethical standard,
Right.
which is it's too complicated, it's a lot of money, nobody really, let's just get along and go along, and everybody here is getting along and going along, and what we've referred to as a moral code, individual responsibility. And my individual responsibility was there's no way that I can do this because I know the effect. I had troops. I served in combat zones. I know what happens when we just leave things. Benign ignorance always ends in blood. And if this argument is it's only 1/2 of 1%, and everybody's making money and the stockholders are happy, and the government just getting along, going along, that isn't good enough.
It's not your money. Don't worry about it. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so for the public servants, they don't believe that. A lot
Right.
of them don't, and they're like, "No, I've got to protect this," and they did. Like she gators or bulldogs, they were on it, and they're like, "No, this is my program, and I'm not about to put my name on it.
Right.
You're
And
going
it
to
is our
fix the
money.
problems."
Right.
Right. And I worked for a real good man. He was really smart. I mean, really smart. Yeah, and here's what he said. He said, if you're having fun every single day, and your job is to make sure that things are supposed to get done, you're doing it wrong.
That's true. Yep.
He said, you're doing it wrong if every day you're happy go lucky and, well, it's great. He said, because your job is to ensure. So if you love everyone and you work hard every day, you're going to come up short.
That's true.
You have to accept that because there are going to be people who don't love others, and there will be people who don't work hard. So if you think that you're going to get some special reward for that, you're not. But you must, because you are upholding, what you're living to your standards, not your moral standards. And I hope they're high. I do. I hope you have high moral standards. And as we try to change the ethical standards, the acceptable, well, it's not acceptable to do half the job. It's not.
Right.
So you're
100%.
probably
And were
going to
you
have a
were you
conflict.
shocked to see that people were thinking that way? Because I know
Yes.
I was shocked in the corporate world when I saw that.
Yes. but I also understood something that I had known and had been reinforced to me many times, especially in leadership in extremely dangerous situations. You can't manage your way out of a leadership deficit
Right.
because leaders inspire people. Managers optimize things. So when you're yelling at a human being, or you're saying you're doing a great job, or give me one more ounce, one more minute, we can do this if we work real hard. That is leadership, inspiration of people. And if you attempt to do that as a manager and you start yelling at the building, come on, give me a little bit more. All I need is 2 more seconds. They're probably going to fire you
Right.
because they're going to be like, you don't lead a building, you manage a building. So it's all about people. It's all about us humans, and and that's what it takes, especially when you're in a tough situation like now.
Wow. That's crazy. So you obviously started digging and doing some research,
Yes,
found out that you weren't the only one that noticed this, and you ran into
yes,
a few whistleblowers, right? More than a
many,
few.
many. And my main concern was, is this an aberration,
Right.
or was there a systemic problem? And one of the things that we teach, this is kind of strange. It all comes back. It's really weird. I actually, for a guy that started out with color crayons like we had color crayons. Why?
Yeah.
Because you're not very good students, right? And I'm looking at this and I'm saying, huh, that's funny, because they talked about this, that you have this issue where we have systemic problems. That's an institutional issue. That is a societal issue, a problem with the entire organization.
Right.
And then we have personal troubles. And personal troubles have to do with you as an individual, or me, where, I say, you need to come to work at 8 o'clock and I show up at 10. They say, you probably shouldn't be intoxicated, when you come to work.
Right.
Well, that's not a systemic problem. That's a personal problem. And that's what we refer to as personal troubles.
Correct.
And so people tend to push it off and say, oh, that's a bad individual. We call it scapegoating. Yeah, he's just not a good worker. But
He's
then
not
all of a
right
sudden,
mentally or something. Right.
sure. And then all of
Right.
a sudden, we see tens, 20s, hundreds, thousands. And we're like, this is a system problem. We can't attribute this condition to one or two individuals, and we can't say he's just a bad individual, so we'll just fire him because he's bad. No, you fired 5 people, and they all said the same thing. Yet we still have the same systemic problem.
Wow. How many whistleblowers did you have, Tim?
Several. It would take me a while to count them all, actually, but our
In the
main.
hundreds, right?
Oh yes, absolutely. And
Okay.
by the time this is over, it'll be in the thousands.
Wow.
And what we discovered was the system, see, as a natural disadvantage. Every single federal worker takes an oath of office, and it's an individual oath of office to protect and defend the Constitution, not an individual, not your boss. It's, you're a public servant and you're doing servant's work. So you take the oath to protect and defend the Constitution. It also states that you are required, as a condition of your employment, to report fraud, waste, abuse, and corruption. So if you see fraud or corruption in your job, you must report it to the inspectors general, which promoted a bit of a problem for me because I was in the inspector general.
Right. Report it to yourself. Right.
Exactly. And I'm sitting there looking at this and I'm like, holy cow, this is not only a structural problem, it's playing to the least common denominator, human nature. I'm like,
Wow.
this is the worst place with no oversight. And we're supposed to do the right thing when we can't do the right thing. There's no incentive to do the right thing, like
So has that
accountability.
council been around for many years or?
The council The inspectors general started in 1978, and the
Okay.
initial idea was Congress wanted to have a better ability to see what was actually happening with the money that was being procured and then executed by the federal executive. So they said,
Okay.
we'll create this thing called a inspector general. Started in 1978, and then every year or so they kept adding them to every single agency. Goes into the boards, goes into bureaus, goes into the commissions, and you have these IGs. And the idea was that they would ultimately be responsible, individual, singular. They would be responsible for the effectiveness and the efficiency of the programs and the operations of the agencies in which they had been appointed. Remember, these are people who are nominated by the President of the United States and then confirmed by the Senate. That makes them officers of the United States.
Wow.
Officer of the United States when you are nominated by the President, confirmed by the United States Senate, just like a federal judge.
Holy
Lifetime.
cow.
So they went in, and so at first they start putting them in, but we're not seeing effectiveness and efficiency. So they said, well, let's just put more. And they put more. So in 2008, they said the problem was not that we didn't have enough IGs. The problem was all of the IGs and all the different agencies, bureaus, boards, and commissions needed to have a daddy rabbit, a center where
They were
they could all.
decentralized. Yeah.
Exactly. But what they really were doing was creating the ultimate command and control center. So now the IGs could talk to each other, with each other, about each other, and they were running all investigations, all audits, and they were answering directly to Congress and directly to the president and even to their boss, who they could investigate if they didn't want it to. So
Wow.
this is, by definition, an alternative governance construct. That is an alternative government construct. So, every 4 years, the president gets elected, brings in a team, you stay for 30 years, maybe longer, and
So,
you operate.
so Congress and I'm sure President Trump saw some problems there, right?
100% absolute.
And
Number
and,
one,
and
no
what can be done?
investigation.
What can be done to change that?
Well, what needs to be done is there has to be an honest understanding of what really happened.
Okay.
So you have a benign and a malignant viewpoint, which I think you need to do when you do analysis. Because if you're going to do an audit or investigation, I'm not going to assume you're a great guy. I'm not going to say you're a bad guy, but I'm not going to assume anything about you.
Right.
I'm going to
Exactly.
look and I'm going to
Look
go
at the
where
facts.
evidence shows.
Yep.
That's it. And that's the unbiased way it should be done. Well, we started doing this, and what we recognized was nothing was getting fixed. And then what I learned in the IG, in its own inner sanctum, was doesn't matter because if we don't like something, we just won't investigate it.
Just brush it to the side. Yep.
Not just brush it to the side. We decide. We
Wow.
pick the winners and the losers. We pick who will be accountable. We pick who will not be accountable. That is a rear guard.
Wow.
If you take a look at like a Marxist system, that would be a commissar. And
Wow.
the commissar
Holy cow.
would be the political officer. And so in 1978, we had the first restructure of the entire federal government. The
Wow.
entire federal construct was changed in
That's
3 months.
amazing.
In 3 months. In 3 months, the Senate, the House, and the President had all the tools they needed, and they reconstructed the government. And they said, we're going to put in a commissar, and he is going to perform audits and investigations, and he will be responsible for the programs and operations of the agency. He will have the ability to investigate the individual in charge of the agency, and they will answer to themselves, and they can be interviewed by Congress.
How was the
But
efficiency? How was the efficiency in the government before this? Because obviously this didn't work at all.
well, I think the difference was in the process of transferring. See, accountability in the government actually belongs to the Government
Exactly.
Accountability Office. And the Government
Got it.
Accountability Office is where we have the inspectors and the auditors, and they belong to the Congress. So what they were creating was an internal system inside the executive branch, not to work directly with the GAO, the Government
Wow.
Accountability Office, but to supplant it. And we recognized that there was a serious disconnect when they put an inspector general into the GAO reporting to the SIGI. Because quite frankly, the head of the GAO, that's a 15-year appointment, right? Like like federal judges and such. He now had an inspector general. But he was the inspector general, except this inspector general didn't work for him, it worked for the SIGI, which
Wow.
happened to be in the executive branch, which is not even his branch of government. And now some people would say that's just the mechanical issue, or that's just
No.
but that is not what was happening. What was happening was it was supplanting the authority of the Government Accountability Office.
So
Now think about
would you say that council needs to be disbanded then?
it. 100%, yes,
That's what I figured too. Yeah.
absolutely. And,
Should have never been put in place.
no, what should have happened, but that is not what they wanted, because they were fearful that if they empowered the Government Accountability Office and turned him into ultimately a super IG, right? And he had people inside the government bureaus, boards, agencies, and commissions, then the Congress would have the eyes and the ears it needed, but they would be reporting to the GAO.
Wow.
So they did it just in reverse. We will have the GAO with an IG reporting to us, vice him telling us what to do. So when you take a look at the balance of power, the executive branch, in this case, the legislative branch, that tension, that natural tension, it sort of supplanted itself. So when people ask this question, I mean, let's just be honest, and I personally don't have any position on things like, and this is good, because my job is to do audit investigations, program integrity, etc. So I don't really have a position like, gee, I think you're better than that guy, or I don't care, quite frankly.
Right.
It doesn't matter.
Yeah, I love when
If
you said just look at the facts. Yep.
Yes. If you get elected and they say you're awesome, and you are, that's fine. I don't care. But if you're not doing something as effective or efficient as you should, you're going to read it. I'm not going to give it to you and say that's my job. My job is to do this, and you must deal with it because you're in the political arena.
Right.
That's part of the job. The concern that we have, which has been borne out 100%, is we have permanent organizations in the Senate and the House, permanent subcommittees. Well, when this permanent subcommittee needs help, they don't go to the executive branch and say, hey, can I borrow somebody from the GAO? They don't do that. They go to the Government Accountability Office and they say, I need some auditors, I need some investigators. Oh, and better yet, we need you to hold all the records because we don't want to have the influence of political, issues trying to trump the investigation process. In other words, you keep it. But what happened, and we saw it, and I personally have no position here, but I'm just saying, we had a permanent subcommittee in the House. And they were responsible for what goes on in the House. And at that time, the Speaker of the House said, oh, I want to set up an ad hoc investigative committee,
Okay.
but I don't want to use the GAO.
Oh man.
I don't want to use any of the professional auditors or investigators. As a matter of fact, I want to cherry pick this, and this was the entire purpose of the GAO, was to ensure that the political context was buffered, not supplanted, but buffered.
Right.
So that after we get done, these are the facts, ma'am. This is it. Like Joe Friday, right? Facts, ma'am. These are the facts. Now, you may like them, and that's okay. You may not like them. That's also okay. But it's not within the political lens. It's within the functional lens of investigative integrity. And they subverted that in Congress. This is a fact. And then, when the House changes political leadership, all the records are gone. You
Man.
know, dog ate the homework. We don't really know what happened. And to answer your question, I didn't want to go this far, but I'm going to bring it back around. Forgive me.
Yeah, no
You
problem.
asked this
Absolutely.
question.
Love
The
it.
question you asked was about accountability. That's not a mistake. You don't stand up an ad hoc special committee, in that case, the Jan 6 committee, and we're going to
Right.
do an investigation, you buddy. But I'm going to take the resources from a permanent subcommittee of the House, and then I'm going to make sure that the experts are not involved. The record keeping is not done by GAO. I don't use professional investigators. I don't use professional auditors, and I don't keep all the records independent of the political process. It's exactly what happened, and that needs to be investigated
Wow.
because that in itself is an automatic. So the fraud and the waste here. So I hired a permanent subcommittee, fully funded, and I didn't allow them to do their job. Well, I paid them. That's fraud and it's waste. Number two, I intentionally stood up a committee and then I put in an investigator who used to be the CIA IG.
Oh my gosh.
And you got to ask yourself a question. Why would you put the former CIA IG to do an investigation while you have precluded the experts? Obviously, a defective investigation, complete subversion of the process. So these are things that need to be looked at. I'm sorry, they do.
No, absolutely. Who do you think put all this in place? Obviously, is the guys that supposedly run the government.
Well, in this particular case, all decision making rests with one individual, the Speaker of the House.
Wow. Right, but back in '78, who put it in place?
Oh, in 1978, we brought the people. What we did was part of the effort was in the strategic reconstruction of the government. Part of the original plan, if you understand, progressive social reconstruction.
Right. That's what
Original
I was gonna ask.
progressive social reconstruction started in the early 1960s,
Okay.
and there was a place called the Institute of Policy Studies, and it was run by a man named Marcus Raskin. And Marcus Raskin wrote the original strategic plan that required capturing one piece of government, decision making in the government. And that is exactly what they did. So in 1961, they wrote the Progressive Social Contract
Wow.
with several Democrats in this case. Not that I have anything against Democrats or Republicans, quite frankly, I don't care.
Yeah.
But
Look at
that's
the
what they
facts, like you
did.
said. I like that term. Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, it is what it is. I'm
Right.
not getting paid. I'm not a paid political actor, so
Right.
I can't really tell you that. But I can tell you how to do investigations and audits, and I can give you the facts, just the facts, man. So in the process of doing this, that was a driver for what we call the progressive social tr- transfer. And if you understand this, it's referred to as the Long March, the
Got it.
Long March through the
World
institutions.
order type thing.
Yes,
Yeah.
control.
Deep state type stuff.
Well, I don't, people use that term deep state all the time. I have no idea what that even means.
Yeah. That's what I was
I
asking
know
about.
what
Yeah.
I know what a rear guard is though.
Okay.
And I know that if I build a plan and I say that your car is going to be able to go 8,000 revolutions per minute, and if you go 8,001, your engine's going to blow up. I can do that. And then when you come to me with a blown up engine and I say, how many revolutions were you going? You go, oh, I was going like 3,000 and the engine blew up. I'm going to say,
I don't
let's
think
take a
so.
look at this. Let's investigate.
Right.
And then I'll come back to you and say, I'm sorry, but you were going 8,007. And that's why you had a catastrophic failure. This is different. This is science, and people often get this mixed up. We do this on purpose. We want to understand what problem solving is. Problem solving does not have a political dimension. But when I supplant the problem solving and try to use a political, that would be an expedient, answer the question today, whether I like it or not. It's a perversion of the science, and I think people are being challenged even today. They said, trust the science.
Yeah.
And they did. And then
Right.
they discovered that the science was being basically adulterated with a political lens. So here's a scientist saying, if you do this, you're probably going to get that. And they're like, oh, well, can you say it differently? He says, sure, I'll say it differently. If you do this, you'll probably get that. And they're like, no, 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 we need you to say it differently. And then they said, well, go find me another scientist, right? Because what they were trying to do is just trying to get credibility and subvert the very functional piece of science. It's an insult to science. And now I
Wow.
think people realize that. They see that.
Man, oh man. Speaking of science and stuff, is that how a lot of these guys didn't get prosecuted like during COVID or and for saying, bringing in the wrong information or like what's his name? Epstein not being processed or prosecuted as well as they are they is the Siggy involved with that also?
I would argue that Epstein, do we know what Epstein really is?
Right,
Not what
exactly. That's
he
true.
did or what they
That's
think
a
he
great
did.
great statement. Yep.
I would argue this. This is all I would argue.
Okay.
If I say the barn is red and you go, nope, it's blue,
Right.
and I sample it and I talk to someone else and say, is that barn red or blue? And they say the barn is blue.
Okay.
I'm going to challenge myself and say, why am I saying the barn is red when everybody else is saying the barn is blue?
Right.
When you look at this as a social scientist, right, you understand that I'm trying to change beliefs, the
Right.
strong emotional attachment to mental propositions. And when I come out and try to make you believe something is not what it is, that takes a lot of work. That takes mental conditioning. That's why we have propaganda. So I have to drive a perception, it's blue, when I know it's red. And then if you are really successful in doing this and you use the engineering of social science, it's a science. We have two
Right.
kinds of sciences, and people, for some odd reason, don't understand this. We have physical sciences and we have social sciences.
Right.
And the purpose of science is knowledge. But the outcome is power.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So on one side, I want power. And the other side, I'm learning science for knowledge. I'm going to make a better world. I'm going to solve global warming. I'm going to do all these things, right? But on the other side, it's power. So, so this is an important concept, and I think people don't understand that. Yes, we have the pursuit of knowledge. And for a scientist, that's enough. I'm pursuing knowledge, trying to make a better condition.
Right.
But you know, that's the means. Knowledge
Right.
is, but the ends is power. So
Got
that
it.
power will be harnessed by somebody else. I hope that
Perfect.
helps. I hope
Yeah,
I
yeah,
did.
absolutely. So tell us about the court case you have going on right now, please.
Oh, ultimately, what we've done is we have harnessed it. Now, we had a basic predicate because we saw the same thing time and time and time again. And when we saw it happening inside the IG itself,
Okay.
the people inside the IG were identifying the corruption of the IG system. Now, what's important is people have to understand the IG system is adjudicating everything else in the agency. So if you've got 700,000 people, all these different entities, boards, bureaus, commissions,
Wow.
all of this, and we call this the intersanctum.
Okay.
And so we were seeing the corruption internal to the vetting process, and we're like, holy cow! There's no way anyone is going to get a fair hearing because the very people that are inside the IG are being retaliated against for not towing the line. In other words, not answering and doing what they were told when they knew it was inherently wrong, it was inconsistent with the rule of law, and it was a violation of not only the moral and ethical underpinnings that each individual took, but it was outright fraud. It was corruption. And so then as we started to collect all these different cases, we looked for common denominators. Meaning, what did you do? Well, I identified that the process of testing this equipment was flawed. And I told them that. You did? Yes. And then they fired me. Really? How long? I've been there for 15 years. I went to the best schools in the country, and I
Right.
never had a problem until I identified there was a problem. And we stepped back and we said, is this just human nature? Just like the flawed human, I don't want to look bad, it's all about me being better. Or was it something deeper? And what we discovered was that it was part of the progressive social reconstruction of the government.
Okay.
Meaning, I was changing this. Now, our government has two pillars. Our government actually sits on two pillars. The two pillars are accountability and transparency.
Okay.
Transparency is assured via the Freedom of Information Act, which we do. If you have a question on what your government's doing, you send in a form and say, I'd like to know about whatever. And they, okay, roger that, and they send it to you. That system has been completely subverted. That's transparency in government. But the most important of the two pillars that are holding our government up is not the transparency, it's the accountability. And accountability, that is assured via audit and, most importantly, investigation. No investigation, no accountability, no transparency, your government is operating outside the normal bounds.
Wow.
So when people question, well, I don't understand, they did this huge investigation and nothing happened. Yes, that's correct, because nothing was going to happen.
Right. That's the
Well,
point. That's why we set this up, right? Yeah.
right. And so then the question that you need to ask is this an anomaly? Only happens here, only happens once, or is it systemic? And it is clearly systemic. And people are now recognizing that there is a systemic failure in government. And so when Elon Musk came in, he essentially performed the very function of the IGs. He's looking at the effectiveness and the efficiency of the programs and operations of the agency. And he comes in there and says, hey, look, I would never do this in business. Look,
Right.
nobody knows where the money's going. Nobody knows how many people are here. Hell, you guys can't even tell me what you guys do. And the system pushed back aggressively. And you have to ask yourself, well, why would somebody fight effectiveness and efficiency? You can look at the human dimension, right? But what if it's not the human dimension? What if it is a wealth extraction system? What if this is not an accident? What if losing billions and billions of dollars isn't an accident? So we tested it. Simple test. How much money do you make? Well, I make $5,000 a month. Wow, that's really, really good. How much money are you spending? Oh, I'm spending $6 million. Oh, okay. So you bring in five and you spend 6 million. Yeah, but don't worry, I'll get more. You'll get more what? Well, they'll just keep giving me money.
Wow.
But you're not performing any different. No. As a matter of fact, when I try to perform, they don't like it. Oh, and you don't seem to have a problem with that. No, human nature says that's pretty good for me. I'm making good money, don't have to do a lot. So it's sort of like feeding everybody high fructose corn syrup.
So when Elon Musk exposed everyone, right, especially with
Yes,
USAID,
yes,
did they all push back and say you're out of here, basically?
absolutely,
Oh, that's what.
absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely. But here's the part that is most disturbing. I was working on a multi-billion-dollar oversight plan.
Okay.
And guess who was supposed to be my partner? USAID and the State Department. And I'm supposed to put the collaborative plan together. And I'm being told, oh, don't talk to the State Department guys, they'll tell you what they want. Oh, don't talk to the USAID guys, well, they'll tell you what you want. But we want you to sign out this report for Congress saying that you did comprehensive interagency planning. I said, I can't do
I'm
that.
not putting my name on the line. You're crazy.
No.
Yeah.
And they were like, why?
I didn't do it.
I said, because this is dangerous. And they're like, what's dangerous about it? I said, when this plan goes forward, there's going to be somebody in harm's way out there in some place in Afghanistan or Iraq or some arduous environment, and they're going to have special faith and trust that we're working in their best interests.
Wow.
Don't you understand that? You took an oath of office. Your oath said that you would support and defend our Constitution. And if we send our people, and this is not just soldiers, right? This is the people from the State Department.
Right,
This
exactly.
is people from
Yeah.
USAID. These are our partners, the host nation. They expect us to be that beacon. We're trying to implement a standard for them. I said, and we are abrogating our responsibility. And we can't tell you where the resources are going. We can't tell you where the money is going. We are not performing the very function that Congress told us to do.
Wow.
Oversight the programs and operations. Ensure the effectiveness and the efficiency. So when you honestly think through it, you have to say to yourself, wait a minute, I have a house. You know, I have a family. And I'm not the one who's giving the furniture away. But yet every day I come out there and there's another piece of furniture missing. It's amazing. I had a chair, I had a table, I had a desk, they're all gone. So I'm naturally going to turn to the very people in the house and say, hey,
Where's my stuff?
where's the stuff going? And they all go, gee, I don't know. Well, just go get
Vanishing.
some more.
It's magic. It's magic. Just disappears.
Yeah, just go get some more. Well, I can't get more because I don't have money to go buy new chairs and furniture and stuff. And that's the difference.
Wow.
Because if you're in a job where you have the ability to utilize the public's treasure, you're cashing checks that the American public has to cash. That's why we have public service. Our commitment is to perform public service, either arduous public service as a fireman, a policeman, a military, a soldier, or less arduous. The arduous part doesn't matter. It's that I'm doing the job. I'm supporting my personal desires for the betterment of my society, in this case, our country. And that's what the chief executive is challenged with right now. He's
Right.
telling these people, I want you to do this.
Right.
And so the reason we filed the lawsuit is because we saw it. It was not an aberration. It was not an accident. And good people were losing their livelihood. Blacklisted.
Man.
Their children would never go to college. Their children taken out of college, humiliated, professionally, socially, culturally. It was a destruction cycle. It was punishment. And so when we looked at it outside of just what I would consider to be basic human nature, we tested it and said, what if somebody was trying to change the government from inside? What if somebody was saying that I could use intimidation and coercion on a population to get them not to do their duty, to violate their oath of office? What if I was doing it on purpose? And you know what that's the definition of?
What?
Domestic terrorism.
That's true.
Domestic terrorism is using coercion and intimidation on a group.
That's
And
true.
that group is the public servants. So the public servants are trying to hold back the wealth extraction. While at the same time, the people who are supposed to do the job that Elon Musk did for them say nothing. You know, it's like, wait a minute, you're the man. You are responsible for this. What? Why aren't you doing it? And have they answered that? No. Have they been held accountable for it? No.
Wow.
Business as usual.
That's awful. So with the court case, the lawsuit was submitted to who to eventually do something.
Okay, so we essentially filed the case and we said that Elon Musk discovered huge sums of money
Right.
that was being squandered, and it was actually given back to the Treasury
Okay.
for reapportionment. And we said that not only were we eligible for 3% of that money as a quitan.
Okay.
We were eligible for that money because we identified the very problem that he fixed. And that if the system that had been put in place, the inspectors general system, had decided not to retaliate against the people for doing their duty, Elon Musk would not have had to take time out of his busy schedule and his passions to help us resurrect and right size the government.
Right.
And so we took it to a federal judge, U.S. District Court. It's run by Judge Boasberg, and we got a judge, one of out of the Boasberg bunch, and we said, you need to hear this case because we have proven that the federal government has reprised. Now remember, when you decide you have a First Amendment right, and it says this, you have the right to petition your government for redress of grievance.
Correct.
It's not well understood because most times people think of that as like I'm standing on a street corner screaming and yelling or whatever, right? But that's not exactly what the Founding Fathers meant. What the Founding Fathers meant by that First Amendment right was you could petition your government for the redress, and that the government had a moral and legal obligation to look into it. So when you're a whistleblower, guess what you're actually doing? You're telling the government and the official officer of the United States that there is fraud, waste, abuse, or corruption. And it needs to be addressed and fixed. And your First Amendment right ensures that you are not reprised against. In other words, I take your job, I punish you, I stop your ability to feed your family, I remove you from government service, I destroy your career. That's called reprisal. And all reprisal is action that is taken after you exercise your First Amendment right.
So you're doing your job, you're doing it correctly, reporting and then they fired you just because you weren't going along with the system. So hopefully this judge will be able to correct that for them and either back pay or reinstate them, right?
Well, what we're really saying is this. This is the largest singular First Amendment violation that we have discovered in the history of the U.S.
Wow.
Because think about it. What we're basically telling you is not only did the system fail, and it has, not only did you have to bring in Elon Musk to point out exactly what the failures were, the very public servants who did their job because they have to do it as a condition of their employment, they're obligated to do this. They didn't fix the problem. They simply removed the individual for fulfilling his duties to the Constitution.
Wow.
And then they reprised against him by taking their job. Now remember, it also says that if I wish to take your life, your liberty, or your property, there has to be due process of law, right?
Right.
Well, guess what government employment is? It's property. It's the very property that provides me my livelihood.
That's true.
It is the property. So not only did you make a pretextual case to take my property, to punish me, but you used fear and intimidation to try to convince everyone else if they did their job, they would be punished.
Wow. Holy cow.
That's why we went to the federal judge.
That's incredible. And have they assigned a date for the court, or have they met already?
Yes,
Okay.
the federal judge said, I'm not even going to hear it.
Oh my gosh.
Now, here's the problem. Whether or not the federal judge agrees,
Okay.
whether or not the federal judge has any feelings about it, he does not have the legal authority to not perform his duty. And ironically, the very case is about not performing the duty. So when you file a case like this, there has to be somebody who brings the lawsuit, right?
Right.
And somebody who defends the lawsuit. Well, guess who defends the lawsuit?
Siggy?
The Department of Justice.
Oh, Department of DOJ. Yeah. Okay.
So we have an ironic situation where the very lawyer who is, quote, operating for the United States government happens to be one of the special assistants to the former U.S. attorney.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
So we're like, wait a minute. The President of the United States said on day one, he put out with a presidential executive order, and it said, we will ferret out reprisal, that's attacking, right, people, and weaponization of government. Well, that's pretty much weaponization of government when you fire your public servants for doing their job, right?
Right.
And he said it, and then the Attorney General of the United States, Pam Bondi, she came out with an Attorney General memorandum and said, yes, we are. We're going to ferret it out. And I'm going to set up a weaponization working group who is going to specifically look at this. At the same time they're doing that, one of the attorneys from the Department of Justice is telling the judge not to hear the case.
Wow. Holy cow. So what's the next step?
So we filed it. It's at the appellate court now.
Okay.
And our argument now at the appellate court is you can't not hear a case. You can't just not even put the documents into the docket, and then just pass it on. And the lawyer, if you think about this, the lawyer who's operating on behalf of the United States government is conflicted.
Correct.
Because he's from the DOJ, and we're saying that the corruption is because of the SIGI. And the chair of the SIGI is the IG of the DOJ.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
I mean, there's just no way around it.
Right.
So on the benefit of all this is it helped us see exactly how it's done. How do you avoid prosecution? How is it that a lawyer from an attorney, right, from the Department of Justice, how is it that they violate the law and nothing ever happens? How does that
A lot
work?
of people in the government are aware of all this already. It's been going on for, yeah. Okay.
You bet. So what we did is we mapped it. We actually mapped the organizational and the construct.
I was going to ask you that if you guys had an org
Yes.
chart. Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. And what we discovered was that if the Inspector General interviews a member of the Department of Justice, they give him immunity from prosecution.
My gosh. Wow.
That means that if I call you and say, hey, why don't you come and talk to me? First thing I do is, of course, I swear you in. You have no choice but to see the IG, right?
Right.
And I can grant you immunity from future prosecution, criminal prosecution.
Wow.
Is it my mistake, or isn't that what happened to all the FBI people and everybody else involved? Didn't they all get interviewed by the IG?
Holy moly. Wow.
And there was no federal prosecution, was there?
No, not at all.
Now remember, this is not in federal law. It's in federal statute.
Okay.
And there's a difference. So the Code of Federal Regulations, when we take a look at the U.S. Code and the Code of Federal Regulations, the Code of Federal Regulations is written to control the agency. Okay? The U.S. Code controls the nation.
Wow.
So this is not coming from Congress. This is the administrative state, the rear guard.
Okay.
They built that system. So we are challenging it. And what we want is the Department of Justice to do its duty.
100%.
That's what we want.
How can the audience help at all?
If you take a look at what we refer to as the corruption network,
Okay.
the corruption network, there's one linchpin. Remember, like I said, you have accountability and responsibility. So
Right.
you have accountability via FOIA, and you have investigation, which ensures accountability. When we look at corruption, there is only one thing that allows corruption to continue, and that is public acquiescence. Now, what Elon Musk did was serve as a vanguard.
Okay.
He came from he didn't have to do this.
Right.
He did public service. He said, I'll help you. I'm going to come in here and you're not going to like it because I'm going to fix some problems. And in the process of doing that, he challenged the very wealth extraction system. That is what he did. And They said, oh, well, we'll remove a few of the head IGs, right? But we'll leave their staff there, the rear guard, and they'll just continue to do worse.
Yeah,
Now they're
keep
not
doing what they're doing. Yeah,
right. So we are now at the point where the IGs, the IG concept, the theory of having a special man. Now remember, under Marxism, they referred to that as the Soviet man.
okay,
He overcame, he overcame human nature, and he worked forever. He was the perfect Soviet man. We created the IG, and we created the IG man.
man,
He
oh
was
man,
beyond personal greed. He did everything that he wanted. Right? We had the Soviet man, and we had the IG man. And guess what we didn't overcome in either case? Human nature.
exactly.
And that, ironically, is what the Founding Fathers told us. If all men were angels, there would be no need for government.
That's true. Man, oh man.
So I will create a government that is in constant competition. This executive branch, the legislative branch, right, and the judicial branch, and they will constantly be this constant challenge, this constant charging, and in the process of doing that, we will protect the most sacred element, which is the American public. And we don't teach this anymore. And I had a chance. I just came from a meeting, and I was asked this question, which shocked me. It just shocked me. And
Okay,
they said, who was the most important founding father? The founding fathers.
right.
And I said, George Mason. And there was pushback, and they said, well,
Okay,
how could you compare George Mason to, you know, Benjamin Franklin, or to John Adams, or to George Washington? How could George Mason be that important? I said, that's easy. Because George Mason was the man who said, I'm not going to sign the Constitution of the United States. And the whole room turned around and looked at George. And they all said, are you kidding me? You're not going to sign the Constitution of the United States, and you're the founding father? And he said, no, I will not sign it until you create a Bill of Rights.
nice.
Because you will protect the very citizens from the tyrannical overreach of the government. And they thought about it, and they thought about it, and they said, George, if we give you that, will you sign the Constitution? And he said, yes, sir, I will.
Wow.
That's why
There you
we have
go.
a Bill of Rights. How come we
Sta-
don't teach this? How come we don't teach this?
Standing up, doing the right thing, like we started. Holy cow.
Yes. So he went against all of the founding fathers. And we had the Bill of Rights. And guess what? We are exercising that very First Amendment right to petition our government for redress of grievance, which is fraud, waste, abuse, and corruption of the government.
That's so crazy.
And so the government and the actors in the government are ruthlessly abusing us and taking our livelihood from us. And that we can't do that. We can't allow that. I mean, I went overseas to stop failing nations from doing that. That we went there to help them stop that. And we're doing it here.
Man, that's awful. Thank you so much for stepping up and doing the right thing. A lot of people would not want to do that, be exposed, but just like Elon Musk stepped up, we all need to step up. For people that want to reach out to you, is the best place LinkedIn?
Yes.
Okay, so you're on LinkedIn. Okay, perfect. And so basically, any other whistleblowers would help, right?
Whistleblowers, and there are hundreds and hundreds of them. Any whistleblower is more than welcome to contact me. What we're expecting the DOJ to do is to acknowledge the fact that there is internal corruption, and that is exactly what the president, as well as the attorney general and the chair of the weaponization working group, said, that this lawsuit is what we're using to drive the consciousness level up, and we need the public. We need the people to say enough. There's no
Yeah.
magic mystery here. I'm not offering aliens or some strange, bizarre, whatever. No, this is. I like to call this the PhD for the GED. This is
Nice.
so simple that no problems here. Now, I want to thank you seriously from the bottom of my heart. And I appreciate what you are doing. Now, the strategy that we started in 2016 when we wrote our strategy on how we were going to counter this,
Okay.
this is a corruption network analysis. We said that we would have to connect the people,
Right.
then we would engage the people, and then we would restore confidence in government. That's what our president is doing, and he's having a go at it.
Right.
And no one loves a prophet in the hometown.
That's
so
true.
and
That's
so,
true.
but I, like you, it's not a political issue for me. I admire that man for one reason and one reason only, because he's in the arena.
Right.
And he has taken the slugs, they're slapping him, they're punching him, and they're beating on him, and he is resilient. And you know what that is? That's Americanism. That's
Absolutely.
the indomitable spirit of America, not the globe, I don't care about all that. I care about this country, I care about our children, and I care about our future. So I think and I respect that man. Elon Musk, a man who didn't have to do it.
Right.
And he comes
100%.
in here, and instead of giving him the adulation and that he deserves for taking something out of his time and his effort and his prowess, we should be saying thank you. Thank you.
100%. Yeah.
Thank you for everything you've done. And to every single mom, every single father that says, I'll sit on a school board, I'll do all these things. That is the movement we're looking for. That is the engagement. We will connect, we will engage, and we will restore our nation. And the only way to do that is to remember what kind of pronoun it is. It ain't my nation. It ain't your nation. It's our nation.
I love it.
So the lifeboat has holes in it.
Yeah. 100%.
Everybody sees them. I need somebody to start plugging the holes. We can talk later theory of better boats and all this other stuff. But right now, when we're in extremis, we do what Americans do best. We come
Yep.
together and we
Exactly.
solve problems.
Thank you for the compliment. I really deeply appreciate it, and thank you for being on. This is an American mission. Like Tim was saying, it calls us all to get involved and do what we can. Right.
Yes.
Demand accountability from the leadership, which a lot of people are. I mentioned this to Tim before we got on. When I was in the Marine Corps in the '80s, I remember seeing like a hammer for $1,000. Right. It's like, and everybody would just like, oh, that's just the way it is. It's not a big deal, but and in my mind, it's like, how could this not be a big deal, right? It's like, where's all that money going to, right? But people would just blow it off, and that's been going on for years. Tim's been working on this for almost 10 years, so thank you for all the stuff everything that you're doing with this as well. Uh, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you on today, Tim, and to get to know you a little bit more. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. Thank you for your leadership, your service to country, and fighting to protect our rights here. Thank you so much. Any last words you'd like to say before I close out?
Fear. Fear is simply lack of knowledge. Don't be afraid. Join us. It's your children. It's your future. It's our future. We need people at every level, at the national, the operational, the state, and the local level. Just remember this, the power has always come from the same source, and it always will, and that's the people. And we are the people, and we demand better.
100%.
We should get it.
Absolutely. Let's make it happen. For our audience tuning in today, share, follow, and subscribe to this podcast. These stories need to be heard. These lessons can change lives. Stay focused, stay winning. God bless you, and thank you for listening and following.